Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Sonnet, and I'm one of the co-founders of SAROS Desalination. Quickly, I just want to take a second to say Happy Veterans Day to everyone that's here, and good morning. And big thank you to everyone that's helped put this event together. It's been really great. Millicent, just a great group of people, and I've really enjoyed spending time with you over the past few days. And big thanks to everyone that's allowed us to be here today. So it really hit me what kind of a special opportunity this is. Just a few days ago, over this weekend, I was sitting in the back of our boat, and this was the view. I was looking at this buoy bobbing around in the ocean and watching it fill this bottle that I'm holding with clean water. And it really struck me what a privilege this is to be able to stand in front of you with a technology that literally began just a few short years ago as my senior design project in school and is now something that has the potential to change lives around the world. So that's a really special opportunity and a real privilege to be here, so I just want to thank everyone for that. So I'll get into it. So SAROS stands for Swell Actuated Reverse Osmosis System, which in hindsight is a really kind of nerdy way of saying something pretty cool. It's a device that uses the massive, almost limitless supply of energy found in our ocean waves to transform this limitless supply of water in our oceans into stuff that you can drink. And I think the presentations yesterday did a fantastic job at really portraying how big of an issue water access is in our world today. And so it really needs no introduction. But I want you to take a quick second and just kind of imagine in your head what you think an area that suffers with water scarcity might look like. So you're probably picturing something that looks like this, right? A dry, arid desert, a few signs of life, but in fact, for over 230 million people in this world, water scarcity looks like this. So at first glance, this looks like a place I'd want to be. This looks like paradise. But in fact, this is an area that struggles with water scarcity, and there's about 1/10 of our global population lives in areas just like this. And even though they're surrounded by water, to them that water, it might as well be sand. It's basically useless. And this fact kind of inspired us to come up with a solution. So here we are today, about 3 years later, with an incredibly small team on an even more incredibly tight budget. We've developed a solution that really works, and we're just a few short months from implementing this solution in our pilot project sites in the Caribbean. And you may be wondering, how did you get so far in such a short amount of time? And we began by identifying the problem. So providing drinking water in island and coastal regions can be really tricky. When the rain doesn't fall, they have basically two options. They can either ship water in from other areas, which is as expensive as it sounds, or you can desalinate it. And today's desalination comes with some pretty heavy drawbacks. So a desalination plant, a large centralized desalination plant like on this picture on the right, requires a massive amount of energy to run, huge capital investment, and they have some harmful environmental impacts. And even small scale, what you may call a water maker, that's pictured here on the right, so this is like something you would have for a household basically, they still require an enormous amount of power. They can be unreliable in remote regions, and these solutions just don't work for many places. And the big kind of common denominator here is that desalination of all types requires just an immense amount of energy to perform. And it just so happens that energy in these island regions is not only difficult to find sometimes, but it's almost always extraordinarily expensive. And to put this into perspective, I was in St. Croix just a few months ago, and I met a guy who actually has 3 of these exact same systems that are in this picture on the right. And he uses these to make about 3,800 gallons a day of water for his house and his property, basically. And it costs him over $20,000 a year in electricity alone to run these units. And that's in St. Croix, which is a developed U.S. Virgin Island. It's just immense how much energy and how expensive this process is. So reliable energy and affordable energy is difficult to find in island regions, but waves aren't. So that's why we developed SAROS, to allow us to tap in to this just immense free source of energy in our world's oceans and allow it to transform this limitless supply of water in the world into stuff that you can drink. So after identifying the problem, we spent the past 3 years dedicated to designing a solution that really works. And we did this by focusing on a strong mission of developing a system that can bring clean water to places all over the world, even those with small waves, by taking a really direct, simple approach, making a design that's really simple, robust, and easy to use, and developing working partnerships along the way for both our technology development and also implementing the technology. So how does it work? We kind of like to think of SAROS as sort of wave energy made easy. It happens in about 4 easy steps, and what's unique about SAROS is it's basically a unique configuration of virtually off-the-shelf components to make all this happen. So we have a buoy that's anchored up just offshore, and as waves pass, this buoy rises and falls with the waves. It kind of slides side to side, and we use that motion to drive pumps on board the buoy. These pumps send pressurized seawater back to shore through a small flexible hose, and then into a basically off-the-shelf reverse osmosis system to produce drinking water. And I want to emphasize that we do all of this without ever making electricity during the process. So the system is mobile. All the components of the system are modular, so it's easy to transport, and it's really easy to deploy. So this was actually a picture taken in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. We were working with the UNC Coastal Studies Institute there, and this was the first time we had this prototype in the water. And we were able to actually deploy this right through the surf off the beach. That is the ocean behind us, and we were able to push this right off through the beach and through the waves, and then tow it out to place and install it with just an inflatable dinghy, which is pretty impressive. So here's a quick video. Take a second to take a drink here too. We're lucky to call Wilmington, North Carolina home. If you haven't been there, it's a beautiful little beach town, but emphasis on beach town. So for a wave energy company, it gives us a place to test this system right in our own backyard. And this is a really unique opportunity because it allows us to iterate our design very quickly. So we're literally a 10-minute car ride and just a very short boat ride away from our test site right off here at Masonboro Island, where we can test this system. And it's great because we can take it out there. If we break stuff, we can bring it back in immediately, fix it very inexpensively, and also very inexpensively redeploy the system and just keep iterating. And it's really allowed us to make incredibly fast progress with the technology development. And also so this is our small scale prototype. This was actually our second prototype in this video. This size is designed to make about 400 gallons a day in waves that are about 2 feet. So I quickly want to kind of cover some key design aspects that make our system unique from other wave energy devices. Probably the most unique thing about this system is its ability to work in really small waves. So we call this our high resolution power takeoff. We can begin making water in waves as small as 8 inches, but we also have a very broad operating range, so we can keep making water and keep making more water up to very large waves. We've also tested this with various pump configurations, which is both commercial and custom pumps, which has allowed us to kind of sort of configure this design for other possibilities outside of desalination even. And we're covering our intellectual property, so we've got a provisional patent obtained, and we just recently filed for a full utility patent on this special power takeoff in this system. So I mentioned obviously we're making clean water, but we're doing this in a really clean way. So the vast majority of places all throughout the Caribbean and island regions all over the world, they generate their power by burning fossil fuels, so burning nasty things like diesel and fuel oil. That's how the majority of their power is produced. By completely eliminating the need for electricity, SAROS has 0 operational carbon emissions. So just as you'd see solar panels or wind turbines grouped together in an array, you would see our buoys in the same kind of configuration to match the demand of a certain area. I will say this picture on the right is St. Croix. If you've ever been there, I'm going to make a little side note and say this is not to scale, and our buoys aren't actually a mile in diameter. But you can see we take a distributed approach. So we've all heard of distributed energy. We are huge believers in distributed desalination. One of the hot topics in the desalination industry today is what you do with the brine discharge. And by kind of spreading out, distributing desalination, we mitigate a lot of these environmental concerns around heavy localized brine discharge in areas. Also, you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see in this picture, but there's a tiny little dot in that left picture. That's our buoy. So it's really difficult to see from the beach, but it's easy to see from approaching vessels. So it's a non-intrusive solution and pretty difficult to see. We've been able to kind of align ourselves with a lot of industry organizations. We're aligned with quite a few of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The International Desalination Association is currently looking for solutions just like SAROS, solutions that are reducing the energy consumption, reducing the cost of desalination, and reducing the environmental impacts, and we hit all 3 of those. This was really cool. Actually, this past summer, we were invited to come speak at the Caribbean Desalination Association conference, and we left with the Best Technical Paper and Presentation Award, which was awesome for us, super validating. We're in contact with over 40 potential end users, desalination integrators, nonprofits, and people that we get feedback from on our target markets and can help implement these down the road. And we're really, really fortunate to have some really great working partnerships with some corporations that are quite literally amongst the best in the world at what they do. So, for instance, we use Spectra Water Makers. They are providing our desalination equipment, and they make the best, the most efficient small-scale water makers out there. Most recently, we've been working with a company called Graco. They're a $1.5 billion commercial pump company that have supplied us with commercial pumps that are on our system right now and have been proven and tested in the ocean. And working with companies like this is really great for our young company because it brings in so much technical expertise that they've developed over years of being out in the world. So our target market, I mentioned there are 230 million people around the world that struggle with access to clean water. So we think about 10% of that is accessible to SAROS, and that means that they have the appropriate wave conditions, the need is there, and what they're doing now just isn't working. So 10% of that equates to about 23 million people, or about 138 million gallons of water per day. So as a supplemental water source only, that's about a $500 million estimated market for our SAROS technology. So competitive advantage, as a desalination system, our obvious competitive advantage is that we do away with the need to pay for electricity, which is a huge component of the cost of desalination. So by basically throwing away the power bill, we're able to cut the cost of desalination in many areas by almost half. So our target price is less than or just over 0.5 cents a gallon for desalinated water. As a wave energy device, our competitive advantage really lies in the fact that we're producing water, not electricity, and the economics there. So since the beginning of wave energy, it's always been a huge challenge to make energy cost effective. But by directly producing water, our system is simple, it's very efficient, and just the economics associated with water versus power make this cost competitive without subsidy. Also, energy storage has always been a huge challenge for all renewable energies. Our energy storage is the oldest, most proven form of energy storage around. Our battery is basically a tank of water. So we've kind of outlined where we fit in the value chain here. So we're a research and development company. So we see ourselves licensing this technology to established pump companies who would build these buoys. And then we would partner up with reverse osmosis or desalination integrators to take these buoys and incorporate them into their desalination systems to get these to end users. Our commercialization timeline is broken down into 3 main sections. So we're currently in the beta development phase. As I said, we've tested 3 and ocean trialed 3 separate prototypes. We've developed awesome partnerships, and by the end of this year, we should have our first fully functional pilot demonstration project at home in Wrightsville Beach. Then moving into first revenues, we're going to continue with our kind of standard fundraising, so private funding, grants, crowdfunding. And actually, we have a crowdfunding campaign going on right now. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I'll be happy to show it to you. But we're also going to start bringing in some revenue from licensing, joint development agreements, and some royalty streams, basically. And then from there, we'll be moving into our market expansion phase, where obviously these royalty streams have then increased by then. And we're going to start looking into expanding our technology into other markets, potentially electricity generation or pumping water for applications such as offshore aquaculture. So our core team is 5 members. We have 3 full-time members, and then our experience spans everything from engineering and design to product development, business development, marketing and fundraising. There's over 50 years of corporate experience here that covers industries from like Berkshire Hathaway, Celanese, Hearst, iHeartMedia, and commercializing startup companies. And also our corporate partners bring a lot of experience in their respective industry to the table as well. So I mentioned our partnerships with Graco and Spectra. Those are absolutely huge, but we're also working with, we have a research grant right now with the University of Colima in Mexico to study just how large these systems will be able to scale. We're working with a nonprofit in Puerto Rico called Opus. They're a sustainability group that's going to help us implement these both in Puerto Rico and eventually throughout the Caribbean. We're working with the UNC Coastal Studies Institute in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. They're a world-class marine science center. They're also a wave energy test center. To the wave energy guys, yeah, we have one of those on the East Coast. That's them. Also, Autodesk has been, they've been supplying us with some cutting-edge design tools, some CAD software and simulation tools that have helped us really bring this to reality, essentially. And I can't emphasize enough just how much assistance from these other companies has helped kind of our young company sort of have experience beyond our years. They've really brought a lot to the table and helped us out. So, I've shown you what we can do with just a couple years on an incredibly tight budget. This Ocean Exchange grant would be huge for us. It would be absolutely huge for us. Think about how far we could make this money go. We're right around the corner from implementing our first pilot projects in Haiti and Puerto Rico. And if we're fortunate enough to receive these funds, they're going to go directly towards those, towards building, installing, and making water for these people, water that's going to have a direct impact on their lives. So please, help us preserve the environment and help us make waves of change for people all over the world, powered only by the waves in our oceans. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dane.
Questions? We're here. Stage right.
Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
I lived in the Middle East for a few years, and a major problem there is the fact there is no water, so everything's desalinated. What do your systems do with the salt that are pulled? Ultimately, in the Middle East, they're pumping it back into the Gulf, and it's killing life. This is a different situation, but I'm curious how you handle that, what you do with that product or byproduct.
Sure, so that's a great question. And the answer is we discharge brine back into the ocean, but there's a number of reasons that make that not as bad as it initially sounds. So large-scale plants, a big problem is they make millions of gallons a day. So the Carlsbad plant they're building in California makes 50 million gallons a day of desalinated water, which means they make at least that much in brine. That's twice as salty as the ocean water, so put that into one spot. Our distributed approach kind of spreads out the brine discharge. So a big problem with the brine discharge is that it happens in one spot and it's very concentrated. But as we scale up, we're definitely taking the appropriate measures to make sure that any issues with brine discharge are mitigated. So, the first thing is we explore the area basically where we want to put one of these systems. We see if there's any sensitive habitats, any coral reef, any seagrasses that are sensitive to salinity changes, and then we just simply don't put the systems there if that's the case. Also, I'll say that we were able to run really low recovery ratios with our system, which means that our brine discharge is not very salty. For our pilot projects that we have, or the system we have running in Wrightsville Beach, the salinity of our brine discharge is actually under the natural variance of the salinity throughout the year that just naturally occurs there.
Right here.
Hi. The reverse osmosis systems require some pretty high pressures. Low pressure pump, high pressure pump. How do you keep the pressure from your pump and that long distance to the shore-based unit?
Sure. So that's a question we get a lot. And I'd say first, the power of waves, they're just immense. We've all seen videos of huge ships even the ships that go by in the river here, being lifted into the air by waves, and there's just an incredible amount of energy in an ocean wave. We use a unique strategy where we actually pump relatively medium pressure seawater back to shore. So it takes about 800 psi to desalinate seawater with reverse osmosis, which, just for reference, your car tire is about 35 psi. So that's a whole lot of pressure. We use special components on shore called pressure intensifiers, which they boost the pressure. They also are a really efficient energy recovery system that helps us recirculate the old pressure from the brine back into the system to build new pressure. So the answer is we actually send about 200 psi water back to shore, where then it's boosted to about 800 psi in a pressure intensifier. This lets us run low-cost hoses back to shore, so we don't have to run really high-pressure lines all the way from the buoy back to shore. The equipment on the buoy is much more simple, and it's much less expensive because, again, we're not pumping 800 psi at the buoy. So there's a lot of economic advantages and also just advantages from a lifespan and kind of robustness standpoint as well. Sure.
Just a quick follow-up to the previous question. How far can you be from the shore given you have to maintain 200 psi?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we want to be as close to shore as possible, obviously, because the less distance we have to pump this water back, the less line loss there is. But so the answer is just beyond breaking waves, which is an answer that really depends on where you put the device. So for us at Wrightsville Beach, so this video that's playing here, that's about 1,200 feet off the beach, which is really about twice as far as it needs to be. But again, it depends geographically on what happens. So in North Carolina, we have very shallow water depths very far out. But yeah, and so line losses are something that also can be accounted for by just simply running a larger diameter hose. So we're sort of like a tortoise and the hare comparison. With this system constantly running all the time, we can run relatively low flow rates, but they're constant, which means that our lines don't have to be very large, and line losses are negligible at all. So we have about 5 psi line loss on average for those things.
Nidhi, I think you're next.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
That was very cool, and I would totally buy one.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, how much does this cost you to make, and how much are you selling it for? And related to that point, are you trying to sell to individuals or institutions and companies?
Sure. So I'll speak on the cost, and actually I'd like to bring Carl Froelich, who's our business guy up here, to talk about. We have a really kind of unique way of how we want to approach the market and actually get these devices to people, and he can talk better on that. But as I said, our target cost per gallon is just above half a cent a gallon. So for reference, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, they're paying about 1.8 to 2 cents a gallon for municipalities. So that's almost a quarter of the cost in those cases. And the final device will be between, for a 3,500 gallon a day system, between $35,000 and $40,000. So an average desalination system that's electrically driven would probably be on the range of about $25,000 for that same size, maybe a little less. But the energy consumption, the advantages from not paying for energy would pay for the system in about a year and a half, just from simply being able to unplug it. And I'll let Carl talk about how we plan to get these systems to people.
Okay. That was a good explanation on the cost. This isn't like any other large capital investment. You know, the desal plants that go in the Middle East or wherever are hundreds of millions of dollars, and it takes 10, 20 years to pay off. So we're looking at a 10-year payoff, which gets us down to that price of water of less than a penny per gallon. The value chain that you saw is the way we're going to get this thing to market. We're going to partner with pump companies. They bring all that expertise. They bring the pumps that attach to our shaft and then generate the pressure that we need. So that together we're going to work together to build the buoy. And a couple of the pump companies said they're interested in actually building the buoy, going to the RO companies, integrating it into their system. Now every RO company needs pumps. That's the only way that they generate this kind of pressure in the flow. So they're right now using all electric pumps. So we're bringing them a very, very unique solution. So the company we're working with sees this as a major advantage, corporate advantage over their competitors of being able to bring a non-electric, renewable-based pump to the RO industry that's never been done before. So those RO companies are the ones that are throughout the world, and the ones we're focusing on right now are the ones that are in the Caribbean. And those people have boots on the ground, as we say. They have all the tech service people. They have all the knowledge. They know the filtration. They know how to distribute. So that's how we're going to actually get the units on the ground. Now, you're asking a little bit slightly different question is, how do we commercialize it in these small villages? When you talk to companies like Millennia Water Alliance, a lot of the communities are small. They're 500 to 1,000 people that don't have constant water. And then they go on up to 10,000 people. And what they do now in those communities, and I just spoke to the guy yesterday, is they have what they call community watch leaders that look over the water systems of those small communities. And they also have entrepreneurs. And those are the people that make the decisions. They're the ones that go get the loans, and they're the ones that sell the water to their community. There's no giving away in these communities because we've already talked about if you give away the system, they won't be maintained. So that's how they're doing all these projects around the world, is empowering people locally, either at the community leader level or at the entrepreneur level. And we have a gentleman in Haiti that's going to take one of our buoys, his plan, and form an entrepreneurial company to then sell water down in Haiti.
Jeff.
Thank you, Carl.
Interesting technology presentation. Several of the prior questioners already got at some of the questions I have. One of the things that you didn't show very clearly, you just sort of implied it in a diagram, is the onshore facility. Mm-hmm. So I can understand, okay, we're in the Caribbean, things like storms show up, and it's easy to pull the buoy out because it's lightweight. You could probably tow it in by the hose if you really had to. But what about the onshore facility? What's required? How portable is that? Do you have to build a permanent structure? Is it sort of something you roll out on a trailer and you make your water and put it in a tank and tow it into town? How does that part work?
Can we have the graphics, please?
So I'm actually, thank you for asking that question, because as I was going through this presentation just now, I was realizing like this diagram isn't quite to scale either. So if you look at, if I can find this slide, here we go. Nope, one more. It's frozen on the video. Okay. So if you look at this slide, you see our buoy. All of that stuff in what looks like a big gray building.
Click it once more.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the presenter view.
There we go.
That did it? Okay, cool. So all of this stuff you see in this gray building, that gray building is not actually a big gray building. It's actually a unit about the size of a vending machine, or for a 3,500 gallon a day system, maybe 2 or 3 vending machines. So it's very small and modular. So yeah, you could definitely move these if a storm were to come. The buoy, as you said, can be easily deployed and also easily retrieved. So if a hurricane comes, if there's any storm questions coming up, you probably want to pull it out if there's going to be a hurricane coming. I will say we tested this during Tropical Storm Julia, and that was pretty awesome. You know, we saw 14-foot wave heights, and it was pretty exciting watching the data roll in from that as we were sitting behind our computers and watching the Weather Channel. And I'll also say that we definitely did not have it out during Matthew. But yeah, that's a great question. I hope does that answer it?
No, that's excellent. So, and then the assumption then I'm gathering from your conversation is that you'd be licensing this as a turnkey system. So you get the module, the processor, a trailer to put on, whatever it is, depending on the deployment geography.
So when it shows up to the end user, yeah, it's gonna look like that. It's gonna be modular, turnkey, kind of plug and play.
The other question, this goes to the brine aspects and also some of the communities you're in, is that there's a huge opportunity to help different communities develop business. And whether this is one that resonates or not is, up to the community and something. But there's a growing market for gourmet salts. Okay, so take the brine,
Yep.
and again, you find that entrepreneur in Haiti or on the outer beach of North Carolina, and there's another business opportunity to take that brine and do something else with it. It's kooky thought maybe, but
Well, I
throw
think-
it at you because you guys are out there.
Well, no,
and you're
I
creative.
promise this guy wasn't like planted here by us, because actually for our crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, we're planning a flash sale with a local salt producer in Wilmington, North Carolina called I Love Sea Salt. And they make sea salt out of ocean water from Wilmington, North Carolina. And she wants our brine pretty badly because it can save her some time because it's saltier than the water she starts with. And that's a great point is, gourmet salts could definitely be another industry that this could help support.
See what happens when you ask the right questions?
Yeah, I mean, you really cleared up a
Hank,
couple
you're
things
next.
there. Thank you. So the IP right now, so we filed a full utility patent around the complete system with kind of a focus on the power takeoff. The power takeoff is sort of our bread and butter.
Okay, and my other question is regarding scalability. Do you think you can replace large-scale desalination plants? And if you do that, you have a lot of lines coming to the beach. Are these things buried, or that's sort of the line management? I would think is a large issue here.
Sure, and I would say that these are concerns that are shared by everyone in the wave energy industry. As we start scaling up, things such as really thorough site surveys start to become more of an issue. So at our scale right now, we're kind of like, you can compare us to the generator you buy at Home Depot versus a power plant, so to speak. So implementation is very easy and streamlined. And because of the economics associated with making water, we're able to start at really small scales and then build the system up at a reasonable time frame, whereas a lot of wave energy companies focusing on power are kind of forced to go really big, really fast because it's the only way the economics will work. So the Wright brothers, their first flight was 13 seconds, I think, or something. Now we're flying around the world. If you told the Wright brothers to take their first flight and then take them 60,000 feet in the air and tell them to glide over to Paris, it'd be another story. So to answer that question, eventually we hope to get there, and we hope to grow kind of, I guess, organically, you could say, to that scale. And then as we move along, issues that pop up are going to be able to be solved with time. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry if that was a runaround. I'm pretty ADD, so.
We've got time for one more question here.
Yeah, it's just the lines in particular look problematic. So are you
Sure.
suggesting that at a small scale you just kind of run them up the beach, and at a larger scale you might
So,
bury
well,
them?
what would happen definitely in the array is there would be a central like manifold where branches from different individual buoys would meet in one spot, and then one line would run back to shore, if that helps. But come see me after this presentation, and we can talk more about that.
That's great, thank you.
Last question, we got a minute and a half.
I just want to piggyback off Hank's question. At scale, you're talking about 50,000 gallons a day, or 50 million gallons a day. And how many vessels is that going to take? What's the surface area that it's going to require? And when you're talking about these islands, their bread and butter is tourism, the beach, and you're going to have visual pollution. So how do you deal with that?
So I have a great answer to the visual pollution thing. If you go to islands, in the Virgin Islands and such, you'll notice that where most of the resorts and things are, they're on the leeward side of the island where the waves aren't. You want to be in a sheltered, more protected place, the same place that sailboats moor up for the night. Our systems will be on the windward side of the island, the kind of nasty, rough side of the island where people aren't going to be swimming and things like that. You're not going to have resorts, in the most cases, facing the beach. As far as your comment to scale, so a 50 million gallon a day plant is huge. This is going to be one of the biggest ones in the Western Hemisphere they're building in Carlsbad.
Yeah, right.
Our system's never, I don't think we're ever going to be able to scale to 50 million gallons a day because quite honestly, depending on the wave conditions in that certain location, you'd probably have to blanket the coastline with our buoys to make that much water. So it doesn't really make sense in places where the populations, like in Los Angeles and things, are just so incredibly dense. We just can't make those kind of volumes. Even though we can make water actually for less than you'd buy from a municipality in LA right now, the scale just doesn't work in that kind of setting. Sure.
Justin, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dane. I don't.